a taboo to return and retrieve, as this session seeks to do, what we have left behind. So as we reflect on this theme of indigenous economics and commerce, we should, in the spirit of Sankofa, remember that what we call indigenous economics is not merely a relic of the past. Actually, it is a living archive for ancestral intelligence and holds the keys to African renewal. I want to draw on Sabelo Ndulu Gashini, who wisely said in his book, Epistemic Freedom in Africa, that we are not trying to turn back the clock of history. What we try to do is to reset the hands to African time. Thus, indigenous economics is not a rejection of modernity. What it seeks to do is to challenge the Eurocentric claims that there is only one path to progress. As I will illustrate, these Eurocentric claims have become the defining policy framework for economic development in Africa, especially Ghana. So this indigenous economics offers, rather than a universal trajectory to development, it offers what post-colonial scholars call pluriversal trajectory to development, one that is rooted in ecological harmony, social reproduction, and moral obligation, and not just a blind pursuit for profits, as we are witnessing in this era of new liberal globalization. So with these prefacing remarks, I just want to probably indicate how the rest of the remarks will proceed in case somebody gets distracted or falls asleep. So I want to, if time permits, I want to proceed in the following order. I would like to touch on the dominant Eurocentric definition of economics as the allocation of scarce resources, and then to argue that indigenous African economics focuses on the holistic reproduction of life. So I will try to kind of do some conceptual land clearing there. I will then try to tease out the parallels between indigenous economics with the original or classical political economy, and then end up by pointing out how African indigenous economics has historically been practiced, and practiced so in a very sustainable manner. So let's look at the Eurocentric definition of economics, which basically, in simple terms, as I said, I'm not an economist, is that economics is the science of allocating scarce resources to satisfy unlimited wants. For this reason, new classical economics is founded on the idealized notion that free markets, if left alone without interference from the state or traditional institutions, will always produce the most efficient, rational, and fair outcomes. I want to submit that this is the main definition or the main focus or principles of new classical economics, which is also what our present economic policies are based on. They are based on the rational economic man. They are also based on the perfect competition, market equilibrium, and of course, they advocate the minimal state, or they will even think that the state has no business in the economy. So these are some of the new classical economics principles that I know that have informed what economic policies are about in Africa. So the new classical economics disembeds the economy from society, stripping it of its ethical, communal, and ecological dimension. I want to dwell a bit on this because you will see that indigenous economics will be quite different. New classical economy detaches economics from morality and from political contestation. As a result, economic decisions, according to the new classical economies, are depoliticized and even deracinated, treating communities as consumers, ecosystems as externalities, and culture as irrelevant. These are some of the crude principles or ideals of new classical economics. So now let's look at indigenous economics, which is we want to offer as an alternative to this new classical economics. What is different about indigenous economics? Indigenous economics will see the new classical ideals and prescriptions as deeply alien to Africans. They are built on assumption that they are not just foreign, but in many ways incompatible with African communities. So most of these things, principles that of new classical economics, are incompatible with how African communities have historically organized production, distribution, and reproduction. In contrast to the new classical economics, indigenous economics, as practiced across African societies before and alongside colonial disruption, is not merely about markets, pricing, or utility maximization. It is the mode of social reproduction, namely the ways communities ensure survival. So mostly African indigenous economics is about how people reproduce themselves socially and materially. It's about the well-being and intergenerational continuity within the moral, ecological, and cultural constraints of their environment. So indigenous economics in African terms understands economy not as a separate domain governed by its own laws, as new classical economics will want us to believe, but as embedded in the wider fabric of life. In this sense, I want to dwell a bit on indigenous economics because that is the main focus of this session. Indigenous economics tends to be more aligned to classical political economy in the sense of Adam Smith than into new classical economics. As we are aware, new classical economics kind of succeeded or supplanted classical political economy, which was first the work of Adam Smith. So classical political economy was concerned with the totality of social life, including questions of morality, inequality, labor, and justice. So whereas new classical economics these days talk about this individualism and even sometimes draw on Adam Smith, as we know from the work of Adam Smith's first book, even before The Wealth of Nations, titled The Theory of Moral Sentiments. In this book, which is now swept to the doldrums, is not so popular as the wealth of nation, Adam Smith insisted on empathy, social trust, moral obligations as the real glue of human society. So whereas people quote Adam Smith, or actually misquote him to support the new classical theorems, his first book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, was a classic example of classical political economy, which then was supplanted or replaced by new classical economics, as I've illustrated above. Now, it is not just about talking about the virtues of African indigenous economics, but these were actually virtues that were practiced historically. So examples like the Trans-Sahara trade routes, which linked West Africa to North Africa and the Mediterranean world, were vibrant systems of exchange, moving salt, gold, kola nuts, leather, and ideas across thousands of kilometers. So trade and commerce did not wait for colonialism or new classical economics to begin. They were already in existence before Africa got in touch with the Western world. Thus, there were African networks managed by African traders long before colonialism. You also have the market queens, such as those in Ghana, Nigeria, and Benin, who were not just traders, they were economic regulators, price stabilizers, and informal financiers. So here we have the gender perspective where African women were deeply kind of dictating the pace of trade. Indigenous trade systems rested on trust, reputation, spiritual values, and communal access, not just on contracts and profit maximization alone. Now let's talk about agric, which is a key element of the indigenous economics that I think this session is about. African farming systems were diverse, adaptive, and ecologically sustainable. These days we are talking about sustainable agriculture, and most people do not talk about how indigenous Africa methods of farming were first, let's say, the pioneering approaches to sustainable agriculture. So we have the Ashanti agroforestry, rotational bush fallow, and of course the Nile flood plains irrigations are all examples of how intelligent our ancestors made use of land. Food was grown not for global markets, but for nutrition, resilience, and cultural practices. These systems sustained strong, healthy populations long before the arrival of the Europeans. So you see that most Africans were healthy living people. Little wonder that when the West or Europeans wanted healthy people, strong people to work in the New World, it was Africa that they came to look for these healthy people, which illustrates that Africa were not a land of famine, and agriculture was a key element of the indigenous economics. And this agriculture is not the modern agri forms of agriculture that we see today. Today, we have GMO seeds, chemical inputs, global monoculture, which are clearly undermining African food sovereignty and exposing youth to non-communicable diseases, which were once rare in this continent. This all illustrates that indigenous economics, especially the agriculture aspect, was sustainable, productive, contrary to what the neo-colonial discourses would like us to believe, that Africa is a land of famine it lacks food security because the farming systems are not productive. When it comes to capital and money, savings and credit, these are not new to the indigenous economics of Africa. The idea of capital in Africa, in African societies, was tied to social capital. So that's the difference. They don't see capital as mere profits or money. It was about networks, kinship obligations, and moral duty. It's not just about abstract accumulation of money. Financial systems like Susu in Ghana, Ajo or Isusu in Nigeria, Stockville in South Africa, etc., were embedded in trust, mutual aid, and cyclical contribution long before the arrival of the Western banks. And these were gendered or gender inclusive and often more accessible to women than the modern banks that we have. And I think most of us might have heard about African socialism. That's the writings of the likes of Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, tried to espouse. These were nationalists that were not necessarily promoting Eurocentric Marxism or communism. They were rather promoting African socialism. And this African socialism rested on these virtues or ideals of indigenous economics of Africa. Now enter the abandonment of indigenous economics and then replaced by neoliberal, neocolonialism, and then neoliberal globalization. So African countries systematically abandoned the core values of indigenous economics and then embraced the Eurocentric, neoliberal, neoclassical economics, which is what is governing economic policies today. And this has not, I don't know whether we'll get evidence to prove that this has worked that well. But from a new colonial perspective, this abandonment of African indigenous economics was not about modernization. It was rather about alienation. It is not even about development. It is self-inflicted imperialism. That the economies of African countries are shaped to serve empire, not community. So the neoliberal economics prescriptions that most African countries have implemented, including Ghana, the ERP of Ghana, structural adjustment in other places, as it is called, were based on finance market, access to international finance market, direct investment, and privatization of state enterprises, all in the name of promoting development. Thus, what we have witnessed across post-colonial Africa is not merely economic misdirection, but a tragic, from a post-colonial perspective, a tragic epistemic and ethical abandonment. So we have basically abandoned indigenous economics, the African version, and this is not just about, as I said earlier on, a misdirection of policy, but it is about epistemic violence. It's about abandoning African ethical values. So this has not really brought about liberation or prosperity. Instead, it has deepened dependency, as we know in Ghana, inequality, ecological destruction, and moral alienation. So new classical economics and its relentless emphasis on market efficiency, scarcity, and individual gain has eroded the spiritual and communal foundation that sustained Africa's societies for centuries. Now let me conclude by saying that African development crisis, as these new liberal, new classical economics have shaped the African economies alongside these crises, are not just merely economic crises. They are, as I said, They are equally epistemic violence. We have allowed imported models to define what counts as progress, intelligence, and value, models that devalue our cultures, erase our histories, and silence our knowledge systems. So as we explore indigenous economics and commerce in this conference, let us engage critically but also imaginatively. Let us reject the idea that Africa's future must be a delayed version of European past, because exactly that is what we seem to suggest, or most new classical economics seem to suggest that Africa must try to catch up with Western development models, suggesting that Africa's future must be a delayed version of European past. Let us recover and reanimate our own trajectories. We are here advocating pluriversal rather than universal models. It is time to decolonize and indigenize economics, not so much to retreat into the past, but to reset the hands of the clock, as Ndulu Sabelo has indicated, to African time. That is suggesting that we want to develop in our own or modernize in our own cultural context. This means reclaiming our economic ethics, reintegrating culture, ecology, and morality into economic thought, and designing policy and practices that affirm African ontologies of relationality, regeneration, and reciprocity. All these African ontologies or philosophies of economics or economy have all been thrown to the dogs by our embrace of new classical economics and new classical models of development. So as we move into this session on indigenous economics, we must now rebuild economic knowledge systems grounded in the real lives of our people, in their languages, technologies, farming and trade systems, savings practices, and spiritual worldviews. In doing so, we restore not only the dignity of our ancestors, but the sovereignty of our futures. Let us see in indigenous economics as not a nostalgic return to the past, but blueprints for sustainability, cultural integrity, and human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Jasper. There is one thing I picked from the opening remarks, and I'll quote him: Africa's future must not be a delayed version of European past. All right, we will move on to our first guest speaker, Dr. Genevieve Nrenza. Dr. Nrenza is a senior research fellow and head of the Religion and Philosophy section of the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. Her pioneering scholarship examines African indigenous religions, their diasporic extensions and intersections with economy, sound, Pentecostalism, sacred spaces, sexuality, and popular culture. She serves on the editorial boards, including the Contemporary Journal of African Studies, Journal of Black Women and Religious Cultures, and the Journal of Religion in Africa. Her influential publications spanning dream studies, gender, theology, and religious infrastructures advances African religious scholarship. At today's gathering, Dr. Nrenza will lecture on ancestral veneration as cultural capital in contemporary economic life. With a round of applause, let's welcome her upstage.
the. Can I use the computer to look at the.
She wants to see the screen.
I want to
You want to
look
see
at
the
the.
screen? That's fine. That's fine. Sorry.
Hello. The presenter's view.
Oh, presenter view. Okay.
Yeah, show display it.
Oh, there is a presenter note.
The
So she
presenter note.
wants that to.
I don't have the note.
Will that come?
Yeah.
Okay, she won.
Give me phone. Yeah. So your notes will be on the side for you.
Okay. It's not touched.
Okay. And you'll be able to move the stuff around as well.
I tried and it was working fine.
So, is it
Yeah, it
going to
moves.
control it or I control
You
it
control everything on your own
from here?
from here. Yeah.
But see, when you go this mode, then the notes now vanish up.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
down there.
yeah.
So let's see. Why is this not working?
No, but she can control it
Okay,
directly.
that's fine.
With the cursor.
The picture is not showing.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay. If the pictures are not showing, right?
Yeah. Strange that is not showing the pictures. Let's try this one and see.
This one too is not showing. It keep.
She wanted to be in the presenter view to see her notes, but when we go
To
there,
see her
she
notes.
can't see the picture.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, and sorry for the slight delay. I'm technologically challenged, so take it like that. Okay, so this morning I'm presenting on ancestral veneration, and I will want to first look at the account cosmology, because it's within the account cosmology that we can understand the place of the ancestors. Then I move from there to ancestral veneration and the account. From there, I will follow up with the cultural capital in ancestral veneration. The next, I will look at economization of rituals in contemporary times. and then conclude with my proposal on cultural reconstruction or revivalism. So, like I said, I will explore the relationship between ancestral veneration practices and accumulation of cultural capital and processes of economization in the Ghanaian context. The first thing I want to look at is the Akan cosmology, because it's within the Akan cosmology that we can understand where the ancestors, the place of the ancestors in Akan community. So in Akan cosmology, human beings live, or human beings are perceived to be dual. There's a physical self that we see, like as you see me right here, and then there is the spiritual self that you don't see. And that one is said to be what happens. Your spiritual self is what you see in your dreams, or the sunsum. And the universe is also perceived as dual. It's also dualistic. And so the universe, what we call Ewiase in Akan or in Twi, and then that is the physical, and then the spiritual is the metaphysical is also the one behind the physical, the one we see, which we can't see with our naked eyes. So the invisible or the supernatural or the metaphysical world is not possible to be seen with our eyes. And what it means is that the spiritual or the metaphysical is the prototype of what we see right now. So for example, in Akan cosmology, when you are a chief or you are a teacher or you are a criminal or a lawyer, when you die and you transition into the other world, which is the spiritual world or what the Akans call Asamado, that is the same thing you transition with. So you are a chief, you are going to be a chief in Asamado. You are a lawyer, you are going to be a lawyer. You are a thief, you are going to continue with that. And the interesting thing is that there is no strict demarcation between them, or there's no strict lining between them. And this is because the life, human beings, life is perceived as a cycle. You are born, you attain puberty, you marry, you die, you reincarnate, and then the life goes on. Life is cyclical in that sense. So, and because of that, there is what we call the one I've mentioned earlier on about the spiritual or the natural world or the metaphysical world, which is not seen, dovetail into the supernatural. And the natural realm is viewed as the manifestation of this very one, as I already mentioned. And why is the natural world dependent on this supernatural? The physical world that we see is dependent on the supernatural, and the supernatural is also dependent on the natural. Now there exists a host of spirit in the spiritual world. Like I said earlier on, that we have the physical and then we have the spiritual. And then in the spiritual world, just as we have rules here in the physical world, we have a hierarchy in the spiritual world. And in the spiritual world, at the top of the hierarchy is God, Onyame. Onyame God is, or God or Onyame is perceived or seen as the creator of the universe, the provider and sustainer of humans, animals, and creation. He's the sustainer of his creation. Next in hierarchy after God or the supreme being is the deities, or what we call in Twi as, or Akan as, Abosom. The Abosom are the intermediaries between man and God. They steer the affairs of God on earth, because God, though, is the omnipresent, the creator of everything, God doesn't interfere in the affairs of men. It is the Abosom or the deities who take charge of the affairs of man. And that's why in the Akan or in the Ashanti life, when a person is praying or when a person is pouring libation, you show the drink to God, that God, we show you drink, but you don't drink, because God is perceived to be up there, and so you can't throw the drink to God. But the ancestors, who are Asasiya, the Tano River, and the rest, are on earth, so they can take that drink on behalf of God. And next in hierarchy is the ancestors. The ancestors are also known as Nananum or Insamanfo. And ancestors are humans. They are humans who have lived exemplary lives. They have lived a drama-free life, contributed to their communities and to their families. They grew to be very, very old and died naturally, gave birth to a lot of children. These are the criteria that are used in picking someone as an ancestor. And once they die and they transition into the other world, they are deified. So the ancestors are humans who are deified, or humans who are venerated. The next in hierarchy is the spirit. We call them, these spirit or these mystical forces are both benevolent and malevolent. That is, some of them are very good and some of them are bad. So we have these spirits to be witches, sorcerers, sasabonsam, and the rest. They fall within this criteria. And the next one is ordinary human beings. Human beings are supposed to be at the bottom. And because human beings are at the bottom, they are at the mercy of all these spiritual forces. This is because a being can destroy another being below it. So God can destroy the deities can destroy the ancestors can destroy the spirits can destroy man. So a being can destroy any being that is below it. So beings with the same degree of potency cannot destroy one another. A lower being cannot subvert a higher being. But then a higher being can destroy a lower being. So humans are at the lowest and at least, and they are the least powerful in the hierarchy. Most vulnerable to attacks by other spiritual forces. And so in the universe is considered as a place that is mysteriously dangerous. And this is because in the universe, all these spiritual forces or hierarchy of spirits, which we can't see with our eye, are working behind the scenes. And so, though we in this world or in this area, as we see ourselves, are at the mercy of these spiritual bodies. The universe is, like I said, is essentially dangerous, and Akans constantly seek spiritual fortification or help to be able to navigate in their day-to-day activities. And this is achieved through alliance with or dependence on a supernatural agent in the hierarchy. God, the ancestors, the deities, the other spirits. Human beings depend on all these ones to be able to navigate their daily lives. So the ancestors are the reason for the season, I would say. And I want to talk a little bit about the ancestors. The ancestors, like I said, are at the heart of today's presentations, and they are human beings who has but remains, they are human beings who lived on this earth and died, but remains treasured to humans and then the other world due to their position. They sacrificed, the ancestors are humans who sacrificed their effort, their knowledge or dignity, and gave birth to many children, led exemplary lives, drama-free lives, advanced in age before transitioning to Asamado, as I said earlier. And they are serving a spiritual bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms. The ancestors are capable to enter, the ancestors are capable to enter and possess humans or individuals. So at times we can, in a gathering or in a family gathering or in a societal gathering, we will say that somebody has been possessed by a particular ancestor or a particular, an ancestor from their families or whatever, because the ancestors can leave the other world to possess humans, to transfer or to give message to the people in the physical world. The belief in deifying them in the physical world is because the spiritual world is a prototype of the other world. And in the other world, or in the spiritual world, the ancestors or human beings who die live with their family, they live with their kin. Death then is not an end to a person, but a continuation of the cycle of life. The cycle of life I mentioned earlier. And this explains the elaborate funerals and celebrations of the Akan and most tribes in Ghana, and solidify their belief in reincarnation. I could tell a little story about that probably later if I'm able to finish everything. A story about reincarnation. So having talked about the ancestor, I want to now move to ancestral veneration. How are these ancestors venerated? How did they come to the stage they find themselves? I had already mentioned that the ancestral veneration is the remembrance and honor of a deceased forebear. So it's project communal and individual identity, well-being, care for memory, moral frameworks, and ethical obligations. So ancestral veneration encourages neuropsychological attachment to loved ones who have deceased or who are dead. And it's a sense of integrity that accompanies faithfulness to the lineage or the community or the family that one comes from. For Mbiti, for example, ancestral veneration, in a sense, is an extension of the living family fellowship in which members of the family share a common life-giving experience based on blood and ties. Like I mentioned earlier, when people die and they go to the other world, they go to their kin, they go to their family. So these ancestors go to their family and they head in the other world. But these ancestors or these are family members who have gone to the other world must be venerated. They must be respected. And if they are not, there are consequences and potential sanctions for neglecting these ancestors or for doing rites or rituals that venerate them. And some of the consequences could be that the ancestors are able to stop or decline a family from having children. So if they will punish a family or they will punish a person for not for neglecting them. And that is why if we pay attention to the prayers of the traditional prayers, when they are praying during one of the cycles, let's say a naming ceremony, they will ask the ancestors to bring them children, because it's the ancestors who are in the other world who are supplying the children or the family members who have gone before. The ancestors will tell them to go back to their kin on earth or in this physical world. Ancestral veneration is not something which is only the Akan thing. I would say that it is cross-cultural or probably across the world. Ancestral veneration is a practice that is central to the religious life of numerous communities, both historically and in the contemporary times. The belief demonstrated in practice through communal and collective individual levels for ancestral figures of very different modalities. And in Renza, in one of my work, I mentioned the communal and individual practices by the Akan that showcase their place in the community. But then the ancestors are celebrated, or the belief in the ancestors or their veneration is showcased in all facets of the Akan's life. Their religious life, their political life, their social, cultural, and so on. And in rituals and rites performed within the Akan calendar known as Ededuanan or 40-day calendar. The English have the 30-day or 31 days calendar. The Akan have run a 40-day calendar and a 41 in what is known as the Akwesida Kese. That is the last month of the year. The most important and celebrated of these rituals are the Akwesidai, Fofie, Awukudai, and the rest. And in those celebrations, the ancestors are venerated, they are mentioned, and if they need to say things or offer them food or whatever, they do that within these religious rituals. But then in life, there are passages which I've hinted earlier on naming ceremonies, puberty, marriage, and death. So at birth, for example, to celebrate the reincarnation of an ancestor who has already gone before and who is coming to the world as a baby, the relatives will thank the ancestors for bringing a person, and they will normally name a child after their ancestor. Most of the times they name children, the accounts will name children, their children, after their ancestors, their departed ancestors, even though they also name them after living elders or even themselves. But then most of the times, they name them after their dead ancestors, and there's a reason why they do that. So names or naming are one of the important ways that ancestors are honored. And during puberty, when a child is said to be setting off into adulthood, the prayers are said to the ancestors to guide the life of a child who is transitioning from childhood to adulthood, so that their path will be straightened up. And when it is time for marriage, the ancestors again are consulted to be informed of alliances given to one of their own due to the marriage, and as such, they have to get ready to shape children or post children from the other world to fill their lot in the physical world. So ancestral veneration, and the last one, in death or at death, the relatives or family celebrate a departed person. And when they celebrate, we note that the accounts give an elaborate funeral to the dead. And these are, I will talk about funerals later. And these are because for the accounts, though death is very bitter, because in a while, death will take a breadwinner away, your friend, your wife, your child, or whatever, away, and you will not see the child again. But then there's the hope that that person or that family member of yours is going to the other world. And in the other world, they are going to your family members in the other world, or the Asamanado, where they will reincarnate into this world and come and begin life. So though death is painful, there is hope. The belief in reincarnation gives hope that our people are going to the other world and they will reincarnate into this world. Ancestral veneration presupposes faith in life after death. A very simple truth is the fact that there will be no ancestral veneration if there was no faith in the existence of human soul. And this human soul continues to live after the corporal death, or after this body rot. So if I'll go back to the accounts again, they believe that the human being is made up of a spiritual element. I think I mentioned it in the beginning. So the human being, as I stand here, an Akan woman, I'm made up of both the physical and the spiritual. And I have two spiritual elements and the other physical element. So the spiritual element are the okra or the soul, and then the other spiritual element is the okra or the soul, and the other spiritual element is the sunsum. Though the sunsum is a spiritual element, it dies with the person, but the okra still lives with the person. So it's the okra that will go to the other world and reincarnate. And apart from these two spiritual elements, there is also the physical, the blood, moja or nipeduya, what encases the spiritual self, my spiritual self. And then there's the intro, which is given to a child by the father through during a sexual intercourse, and that is what protects the child until the child comes of age. So for the Akan, the blood is what links you to your family, and then blood is what also links you to your lineage. And with this explanation, I want to go to the next, which is on cultural capital. What then is cultural capital? And cultural capital comprises the various non-pecuniary social assets that promote social mobility in a society. So the Akan cosmology associates cultural capital with natural material. The spiritual, they associated with a natural material. The spiritual resource, customs, communality, the art, values, these are all cultural capital. And there's also the chieftaincy, rites, rituals. These are all capital, cultural capital. But then this concept of cultural capital was developed by Pierre Bourdieu in the 1970s. And with Pierre Bourdieu's theory, it goes beyond material and economic wealth to social structures, networks, family relations, cultural knowledge, linguistic competencies, and socialization practices. So for Bourdieu, he considered three forms of cultural capital: embodied, objectified, and institutionalized cultural capital. And this Bourdieu's idea can be used to make sense of this explanation that I've been talking all this while about the Akans. For the Akan, embodied, objectified, and institutionalized cultural capital are seen in their practices, their rituals, their practices, their day-to-day activities. So embodied capital or embodied cultural capital includes knowledge of customs, respect for the elders, and traditional values like hospitality, communalism. And these capital or these embodied cultural capital is passed down through daily life from generation to generation. It's something that you are socialized into it. You are not schooled, but as you live in the community, you are socialized into it. And then the objectified capital consists of tangible cultural capital. Examples would be, I think this one. Let me mess it up. It's fine. I think this one, I wanted to show the Kente, the other picture up there, but it's not showing. But I think that this, oh, okay. All right. So, so like I said, the objectified cultural capital is made up of the tangible crafts, creations such as carvings, pottery, and other forms of craftsmanship. And but then we can also talk about the Akan shrines and objects within them are all tangibles. And then the institutionalized cultural capital is the institutionalized or the institutions in the Akan community, the chieftaincy, the priest, the priests and priestesses, herbalist, and the rest. These are all institutionalized forms of capital in the Akan setting. So the Akan cultural element or cultural capital expresses knowledge, practical skills, and competencies for effective and effective living. It shapes intellectual contributions, social relations, and community participation. This thing's not moving. So I want to move to the other one, but it's not going. I can't find the Kesai.
So this one.
Yes. I already. Okay. It's okay, I'll just go through this. So what concerns us is the mode of cultural capital transmission or accumulation and transformation. That cultural capital dynamically transforms through the human experience, and contemporary development prompt recasting of both the educational system and then the formal and informal institution that support the transmission of knowledge within the Akan socio-political sphere in Ghana. And Corner 2012 argues that acquisition of cultural capital formally takes place through family education, yet a significant informal portion is cultivated through interaction with the wider world. Once a family and neighborhood networks are established, time outside of school children interact with each other, or adults interact with each other in the community, and this further expose them to cultural capital opportunities. People within a family or neighborhood find each other complementary, developing literacy patterns. People choose to either adopt, modify, mix, or reject prevailing cultural capitalization. But then how does the interaction between traditional reverence for the ancestors and cultural capital deeply establish or transform into economic gains in contemporary times? Next, I want to look at the economization of rituals, and I'll be really fast because I'm behind time. So rituals and ceremonies constitute the traditional African life, and they are ways that Africans seek advice, protection, guidance, and favors from the supernatural forces. Like I said in the beginning, that there are spiritual forces and the human being is at the bottom. So through supplication, human beings seek the help of these spiritual forces. So traditionally, ancestor veneration is deeply revered because, or is a revered practice within the Akan culture, serving as an integral part of the social fabric. And naturally, these activities or these practices over time has become economized. There is though the people live their life, they perform their duties, and they will say that they are performing amanye and amamre, but then these over time has also turned into economic ventures, shifting societal values. and towards a more economically driven practices surrounding these rites and rituals. So the economization of ancestral veneration in Akan or in contemporary Akan community is significant because it's a transformation influenced by globalization and social or socio-economic activities. So a ritual or somebody dies and the funeral, when somebody dies, rites or rituals must be performed. But then these rituals or the funeral has been economized. So I call it the funeral economy. And these days, there's a production of fantasy coffins and prolongation of extensions or preparation necessitates significant financial outlays that benefit various stakeholders within the funeral industry. This morning I was late because I was driving on the Hacho Road, and transition is a modern way of taking care of the funeral. There are also a modern mortuary. There's the undertakers, there's the professional mourners, spinners, and these are all economic or their ventures that people get money from or economize. And these fantasy coffins, if you look at them, there's the fish. It means that the person signifies the job that the person is doing. So now a family are able to send their loved one in style to the other world. You are a fisherman and you go in a fish coffin. You are a pastor and you go in a Bible coffin. And then this is an interesting one I got when I was doing my research. It's pennies, but it's a coffin, and it was used in burying a man who was supposed to. The family or maybe the friends say what the meaning of what they gave me when I asked was that he was a neighborhood humanizer. So you were a humanizer, and you are going to continue your humanizing in the other world. So they send you in this. And there's the polished tombs. A teacher is going to go in the pen, and there's the hairs. This one is a farmer who grows pepper, so he is going in a pepper coffin. And so these are all now means of economizing. And the addition is that in the Akan society, when a person dies, the person is mourned. But these days, the mourning itself has become an economy. We have professional mourners. There are Mami Ode and her group, this woman up there. This is Auntie Dokli and the rest. These are women, professional mourners, who will come and cry for you if you can't cry at your funeral. And there's also the undertakers that will dramatize the procession to the cemetery in style to send you to the other world. There are the Kete and Adowa dances, which are all performed in the other place. So the integration of culture, of ritual and economy is an everyday practice, though these days it has been economized. And I'll briefly touch on the festivals. The festivals too are one of, I wanted to talk about Africa's most popular cultures, funerals and festivals. And festival is also highly economized. In these days, traditional festivals and new festivals that are coming are all highly economized. The festivals are done with the interest of accruing something. They are organizers, people who organize festivals, the caterers, the sellers of artifacts, and all these people are advertisements, radio stations, TV stations. These are all groups of people who have interest in getting something or benefiting from the festival. I want to end with what I've done so far. I've tried highlighting the dualism in Akan cosmology and pointed out the place of the ancestors in the spiritual hierarchy. I then discussed themes of ancestral veneration and the Akan cultural capital and the Akan cultural capital in ancestral veneration. And I touched on the economy of African most popular culture. I used two examples, funerals and festivals. And lastly, I tried to reconstruct or propose an idea of a reconstruction or a revitalization of culture. And I do so by refuting a negative assertion with scholarly works and empirical data by J. Badu, 2010. In his thesis, he stressed that the misunderstanding of ancestral veneration made anthropologists and the others term ancestral veneration as idolatry, superstition, syncretic, and new necromancy. He continued that ancestral veneration is not ancestral worship, so there should be a discrimination or the difference between what is ancestral veneration and what is ancestral sacrifice. These words, he said, were used to discredit it because there is a superior religion, Christianity, Islam, trying to push indigenous religions down. And by giving these negative tags, it rather magnifies them and then disgraces or lowers the indigenous religions. Now, the question that I want us all to think about is, how could St. Paul, St. Peter, James, Virgin Mary, and all these biblical venerated others, I call them others because they are not Africans, have that high status in Christianity and especially in the Catholic Church? And then my ancestors, your ancestors, are demonized. Is it religious relativism or cultural suicide? Think about it. But lastly, I want to say that for cultural capital could be leveraged to strengthen formal education, cultural institutions, and other infrastructural channels. There are lessons that could be learned from the ancestors, which could be maintained and taught in intergenerational systems and promote family lineage networks. We need to document and archive, research, and support along with the preservation of oral records within Akan studies. And this one will go a long way to facilitate accessibility and further safeguard contemporary relevance and contribute to the wider African epistemologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Genevieve Nreza, for that interesting exposition of the Akan culture and what some of the coffins we've been seeing really mean. So if you're a pepper grower, if you die, you'll be buried in a pepper coffin. And if you're a womanizer, of course, you know how you're going to go. I don't have to tell you.
these things are just to show my cultural identity. I'm not going to do anything funny. So just take your pen and then either write your name or a symbol that represents your name. You can give a 2-line, put your mother at one side and your father at one side. You can either write their names or put a symbol that will make you remember. Now, when you are done, go to your mother's side. I love my mothers. And then put 2 lines again. Try to remember if you can get your mother's father's name and your mother's mother name. If you cannot, just put something to remember that. Then let's come to our father's side. Put another 2 stripes, one for your father's mother and one for your father's father. Somebody has started saying, if you go further, I can't remember anything. Can you go to your grandmother's side and put another 2 lines, get your grandmother's father and your grandmother's mother for your mother's side? Go to your grandfather's side, put that, you get that. So this is the problem of Africa. When I was a seminarian, I could read the scripture in Hebrew, NRK, Enhologos, and Prostontion. I could rattle the names of the biblical icons to the latter, but I can't remember the 3rd generation of my ancestors. We invite all of them, whether you remember them or not, to fill these spaces and help us to progress. I say, when the gods meet the ancestors, when the gods meet the machines, metanomics, ancestral intelligence, and the re-enchantment of economic thought. Okay, so with this presentation, I'm just going to try to take us through an understanding of AI. Gideon did justice to that, so I won't spend my time there. Then I will introduce Abosom Nsumai, which most of us, when we hear the names, we think it is something so mysterious. Today we will demystify it. And then we'll do a comparative analysis with Abosom and artificial intelligence. And then what implication it has for Africa economies, and then the era, the new model, metanomics. What is the polycrisis here? Ecological overshot. You see, the failure of our economic imagination, one, everyone thinks that when you enter, of course, as the earlier speakers said, I'm also not an economist. So you pardon me when I mention Adam Smith's name wrongly. So you realize that everybody thinks we have scarce resources and we are trying to find a way to maximize the use of it. But if you listen to the speakers from yesterday, especially from our grandmaster, Professor Imhotep, you realize that resources are overly around us, except that we probably don't know how to navigate between our resources. Why? Because there is a kind of spiritual and social disconnection. We have lost meaning. For most of the young people, the whole idea is go to school, get a job, get married, buy a car, buy a house, marry, go to church, die and go. But when you get back to our history, this wasn't our idea. Why? This is the reason why there have been a lot of inequalities in our society. Again, our economy, for me, I'm not an economist, but what I see, there's a kind of a mechanistic paradigm that the economy of the country is like a machine. You inject this amount, GDP will do this. You inject this, GDP will go here. Then you go to the market and you buy kenkey and you realize GDP is not at the kenkey seller. So it is becoming like a mechanistic something when the living system of how we should live our day-to-day life has been thrown away. This is because there's a loss of our consciousness of self. And we are living in a kind of a programmed life. It's just like this computer. Once I press go, it moves because it has been programmed. Now, what is the core thesis I want to talk about? Our economic model is disenchanted. Why? Because it excludes rational, spiritual, and our ecological wisdom. For us, what we are interested in is to get money and move. That's it. Everything else should go at the back door. So the question now is, how do we re-enchant our economic system to serve life, not just growth? And of course, the answer has already been given from our previous presentations: metanomics. Introducing a solution for this gap. What is metanomics? I don't have to go far. I mean, the Greek, of course, know that the Greeks were the first who were well closer to our ancestors. So they understand how our people lived very well. So sometimes when they give definitions of terminologies and other things, you realize that the idea resonates a lot with how our people lived from Kemet, from Akabulan, from Walata, from whatever. Meta, beyond the physical. Then, of course, from the economic point of view, nomos, that is the arrangement of, or the management of our day-to-day values. Now, if we want to copy from our esteemed speaker, Professor Imhotep, the definition for metanomics will be a higher order economic framework that transcends mechanistic thinking and the fiat system. I say always that for me, the American dollar is backed by guns and atomic bombs. Because if you decide not to use it, you'll be supplied with guns and atomic bombs. It's not backed by any value. Your CD, if you are allowed to go on, is backed by everything, including our own ancestral intelligence. Therefore, the purpose is to restore economy to the original meaning the Greeks got from our ancestors: economia, the stewardship of the household. In that sense, metanomics is a philosophy of integration. And for our side, integrating artificial intelligence and Nananuma Bosum. How this is possible. So AI on the other side, I've seen Gideon trying to find out what he can do with me, and then Nananuma Bosum is here, so let's go. Oh, sorry. Okay. So what is artificial intelligence? Of course, those who are here from the beginning of the program, I may not need to go too deeper, but it's a machine system that imitates human thinking. Not its own thinking, nothing else but human thinking. It means that the human has programmed his own thinking patterns there, and it operates with it. It learns from data. So it goes out of nothing except data that has been inputted in it. It functions through programming. So it is what the human has put inside the machine that the artificial intelligence system works with. Algorithms trying to create patterns, and then the machine learns to recreate other things. But all still within the command prompts and the data that has been inputted. So when you pick some of the applications, like Siri, and you say, Siri, search for the person called maybe Gideon, or Professor Imhotep, or Dr. Genevieve. The only thing Siri, Google, ChatGPT, driving cars can give you is the data that is already existing at the Silicon Valley. I don't know if I'm wrong. Gideon? Right. So, in some sense, artificial intelligence has some limitations. In my other presentations with some South Africans, the topic which looks a bit catchy was artificial intelligence is a synthetic version of Nananuma Bosom. I think it's something debatable, but let's go. Now, what is bosom or suman? This is a word that from ages of systematic and institutional brainwashing, Africans don't want to hear about. Because for them, once you do this, you are going to hell. Bet you, some of us here, including some of our speakers, were already priests, but they are now traditionalists. You don't know heaven more than them. Because you are a church member, he was a priest. Myself, Nana Bosom, Comfort Damwan's head is here. He was a Catholic priest as well, but he's now a traditionalist. Can we give him a hand of applause, please? So, bosom is a sacred energy embedded in material forms. Please, just let us please lower a bit of our ego and listen to this. It's just energy, but sacred one, that is embedded in material forms. It can be stone, herbs, wood, metal, or anything. I was trying to show you a sample. Probably I'll see if I have it here. It's a spiritual interface between the divine realm and the human consciousness. I think I give credit to Dr. Genevieve for the wonderful work she did, because she actually laid the foundation for most of these things I'm talking about. It communicates not through the phone, not through the computer, but through human medium, like the comfort, the diviner, the tobe, or whatever. And here is where it gets interesting. Whilst the AI operates within a data that is packed within, Nananom Bosom or Suman operates multi-dimensionally. So you can ask artificial intelligence to tell you the past life of Professor Imhotep. You can only get what is stored on a computer. What will Professor Imhotep's future be? It is very difficult. It can, predict from probably his past. But if you sit in front of a Suman, a credible one, and you ask about your past, he can mention all the generations you have forgotten. Your future, he can tell you even when you will die. Just to give you a small example, I'll go fast, don't worry. A small example of the Sumankwahine of Kumasi went to US. He was passing somewhere and he saw they have written a shrine somewhere. He said, shrine in the US. So he rushed there. And when he went, the West, the white guys have come here to buy 3 tons of bosom. And you go there and see fat, strong chicken. They cut them for the bosom every day. So he asked them, why this? They said they heard about it, they went to buy it, they are feeding it, and he's giving them results. And he said, what results have you gotten? He said he was able to tell when somebody was going to die, and the person died that same day. He requested for a schnapp, and he poured libation, and the bosom was shaking. Because he is a Tano man, they know him. You get it? So, multidimensionally, they can take information and give us. They are strong, they are very powerful. If you want to understand it in a simple form, it is like a mobile phone, just like a mobile phone. But this one is organic and super one. Look, the Suman or the bosom is actually not the device you see. But because of the understanding of it, you can't see the spirit, you can't touch it. We mostly relate it to that device you see. That device looks like a smartphone. Because the languages the Suman understand is way beyond what you can comprehend. Just like if you send I love you to your wife or your husband or your girlfriend, and it goes through the system. If Gideon is here, he will tell you. If it gets missing in a system and you go to search, you see 0 and 1s. If you actually add emojis, you will see plus, minus, and other signs. This is because you don't understand the computer language. And the same thing, if the Suman wants to communicate with you directly, it will be very difficult. So they do that through these mediums. In exceptional cases, they do that directly to you, the person, because you, the person, can also train yourself to become a Suman. They download the codes from Infinite Wisdom from different dimensions, no limit of database like the Silicon Valley's own, taps into spiritual and ancestral consciousness. Sacred human beings become their interface. Now, this is a comparative kind of analysis with Suma and Bosom. Base code is binary for artificial intelligence, and for the Bosom, is spiritual frequencies, quantum vibrations. For the processor, silicon-based. And then for an animal bosom, Suma bosom, sacred or comfort becomes the processor. You get it? Now, the intelligence source is big data that is stored in a Silicon Valley. Human input is humans who put them there. But with the animal bosom is the divine realm, the ancestral intelligence, and then the cosmic field. So you can sit here. If you are lucky to see when they are preparing bosom, you will love it. Almost everything in the world is inside there. Then you talk about the interface. Here we use mobile phones, our computers and stuff. And there they use shrines and then rituals and sacred spaces. Talking about the programming is human programmer. But on the other side is a ritual initiation and ancestral codes. So sometimes you'll be told, when you wake up, wash your face and say, Krema. And something will happen. You think it has not happened. It has already happened. Then the output with AI is our phones, our computers, but the output in most often at the shrines are their comfort and then the people who serve their comfort. I've just listed few of them that the spirit speaks directly. Then you'll be here and you hear him speak about everything you ask. Let me share just this simple one. I went to visit one of them, and he said I should sing for him, for her. I think that deity appears as a woman. So she asked me to sing for her. I mean, she spoke directly, not like she spoke through somebody. So I was thinking, and I said, no, there is this song I love so much. Imagine there is no heaven. I don't know if you know it, by John Lennon. As soon as I started singing, this is a spirit, started singing with me. The same song, no missing words. But when I went, it was not speaking English, it was speaking Ewe. And it was singing English song. And after that, he told the man that this is a warrior song that fought a lot of things in the past. These two intelligences come together to help us demystify metanomics, the silicon and the spirit. I've already shown what is this, but what we should keep in mind is that each can complement the other. Of course, one has a bigger space, the other one is a very big operator of this three-dimensional world. So if we bring them together, it will help in whatever we'll do. What are they? First, AI is a powerful tool, I've said already, for calculation, pattern finding, and automation. It's fast and can handle massive amount of data. Suman is ancestral wisdom, living in balance, as my mother already said. It provides the why, our ethics, our values, understanding of reciprocity with people and nature, and it can navigate other dimensions, and it's organic. I've said that already. Now, what is the problem when one stands alone? What we are seeing now, the big dichotomy between the academia and then the spiritual practitioners. When you go there, they love it because they feel, and when you speak with them, you realize that your economic principles, they may not mention the names of the titles you've given to your economic principles, but they speak deeper principles beneath your principle more than you can speak. So the problem along with AI is, though AI is smart but has no soul, it can create efficient but unfair and destructive system. That is what we see, maximizing profit, irrespective of what happens. You put it there, you download or you do whatever. You use it to get your money and you go. And it can't navigate other dimensions. Suman is wise, but can be slow to scale. Now, sometimes the priest has to go through a whole lot of things to bring information. It's deep. Local knowledge struggles to organize complex national, complex national economies and compete with the global financial network, because the world has far left them behind. So if you want to get them to compete, go to the UN seminar to speak about economic issues in Africa, it has to go through a lot of processes. Then what can we do? Combining them for metanomics purposes. AI is a tool, SUMA is the vision. This is a big combo. Together, they create systems that are both smart and sacred, efficient, scalable, and aligned with human and ecological well-being. Our problem is already solved. So, like I said, AI is the tool, SUMA is the vision. Let us see how metanomics combines AI and SUMA or bosom to solve our dependency on the fiat system. I don't know, but let's try this. Problems with the fiat system, the metanomics AI and SUMA solution. One, money is created by debt, as debt by the central bank, creating inherent insecurity and forcing growth at all costs. What happens here? To use metanomics to solve this, create resource-based currencies. One, what will AI do? AI will track the value of real and local wealth, like clean water, health, soil, renewable energy. And then SUMA will ensure that this is done respectfully, turning ecological health into national wealth, not just a commodity. Another problem we can talk of, wealth is extracted from communities and then flows to financial centers, leaving the local people or the local economies impoverished. What can we do there? Metanomics through AI and SUMA combination. We use endogenous digital currencies, like we heard yesterday. Powers a secure local currency platforms like the G Wallet that keeps trade and wealth circulating within our own region and community. And what will SUMA do for this? SUMA will guide the rules to ensure fairness and reciprocity, not hoarding. If you want the answers to this, go and ask President Rawlings. He will tell you, when you go to our shrine, you speak the truth. Then the next one, the system is opaque. Of course, anybody who wants to do that wants to hide it. And controlled by few, leaving the ordinary people with no say. What can metanomics combine AI and artificial intelligence to achieve? Implement democratic, decentralized finance system. So what will AI do to ensure this? We'll manage transparent, community-owned financial systems for loans, savings, and insurance. Then SUMA will provide the communal governance, models to manage them for the common good, not for private profits. This is what people don't want to hear, capitalism. Our economies are dependent on exporting raw materials, which keep us weak position globally. What we need to do with the help of metanomics is optimize for regenerative production. So AI will help local industries add value to raw materials efficiently. You can just go on your phone and search, how do I process cocoa for chocolate in my house? You can do it. Then you consult SUMA to ensure the production process under the land. Recently, I went to Ho for the Yam Festival. If it was well done and it honors the ancestors, in many, many forms, like my mother said, dreams about how production can even increase will be transferred to you through the other 5 senses we think don't exist. Creating a brand of ethical, spiritually grounded products that commands respect and higher value. So the future is here. I feel everyone, just like Prof said the other time, should start thinking about metanomics. Thinking about metanomics, think about artificial intelligence dominance, and think about your ancestors and then your SUMA. Don't be afraid to go there. The fiat system keeps us dependent by centralizing control and divorcing money from real and local value. Metanomics uses the artificial intelligence and human synergy to build alternatives that are decentralized, resource-backed, and community-powered. Nobody is left behind. But this is the irony. This is the problem we are having now. African spiritual system has been called demonic. My mother said everything. For you, anytime we mention African spirituality, hey, hellfire. Everything about your ancestors, no. Right now, if you can be sincere to yourself, you are not able to trace your second or your third ancestral lineage. But I'm very sure you know how Jesus was born, the genealogy of Jesus. I knew most of that. Look, if you go to any of the shrines, if you need help, and of course those who are medical doctors here will bear with me, there will be times the doctor will tell you, well, we can't do anything about it again. I don't know whether you people are aware of this. And then you go to the shrine and they're able to do something about it. So why don't we commercialize that and find a way to bring that system in? Most politicians, I know, it's not like they told me, most of them, well, we can't mention the name, sorry, I keep it to myself. Most of them secretly consult them, but publicly denounce it, instead of using it for national development or African growth. You go and meet them there. Some of them even come at night. If you go and see some of the bad roads, they will drive there at night to go and consult the gods. And they can't think that we can use this same energy packed. So if a Sumai can tell you, go to your, no, let me change the example. If a Sumai can tell you, go and pick coconuts, hit it on the ground 3 times, and spread it on the street, and you win the election, and you do, and it works. Can't you go to the Suman and ask, please, the economy is sinking. How can we transform it? I know the other staffs. How can we do it? Give me ideas. And you know, Suman relates with people according to their mental intelligence. If you go there and you are an engineer, it will communicate with you like an engineer. You go there and you are a dumb person, the same thing they will do. It's a question you ask them, they give you the same as the prompt you give to artificial intelligence. This is because of the disconnection from our ancestral system, and it is a serious developmental tragedy. Few people who are enlightened about our ancestral system and they go there, unfortunately, they go and ask for very, very minor things, like for girls, how I can attract a lot of beautiful women. Some of them will go for boys. Maminya, a lot of clients. And then the married people will go and say, please, Mami kununome, money for baby and coming home. Let my husband love me and not to go behind me. The same thing applies to the other side. This is what we go and ask. But instead of even sending your child and ask them, what are the qualities, the child's DNA, the 13.7 billion years of DNA in your system, why are you here? What can we train you for? What's your purpose on this planet? We'll leave that until the child hits his head all around when he's 40 years and he knows that, I was a carpenter. I didn't know. So reclaiming the narrative, visionary economics requires supportive policy. This is our suggestion. If the government will take it, it will help. If the academia will take it, it will help. I know most times when you stand here with the carries around you, with you looking tattered and other things, they say, oh, maninka semye no unko. The same thing, you also pass like that on this planet. But me, I can enter into other dimensions. Sometimes I can decide to come back here. You cannot. So listen to us, make effort everywhere you are, in any institution, make effort that ancestral intelligence can be brought back to our, educational and then institutional dispensations. The goal is to create a breeded knowing, a future generation. What is the action? Mandate the integration of indigenous knowledge system into national curricula. I don't know whether we have indigenous economics within the, the economic systems in the faculty here. I don't know whether we send people like Dr. Genevieve did to the funerals to study how the economic activities happen, both at the funerals and at the shrines. The outcomes is that we'll have a whole citizens who are both technologically literate and ancestrally conscious. Again, we can talk about legal and structural decolonization. In fact, I discussed my ideas with Professor Mbote. If he had not stopped me, I was going to bring a whole lot of, colonization that has programmed our mind in such a way that we cannot even think outside the box. We are programmed like the computer I'm using here. You just need to push a click and everything happens. And you are predicted every time by the people who programmed you. Because I know right now, if I do this thing I have programmed you to do, this is the results I get from it. If I start pushing visiting the opposition leader of the country, the president will start listening to the proposals we are giving him. Is that not what is going on? Because we have been programmed to think that we have to follow the status quo. Colonial era laws still enclose commons and criminalized traditional practices. Here, I want to assure you that one of the works NATAF is doing, even with RF, is to find a way to screen our traditional spiritual priests, to look for the credible ones in order not to, distort the work we are doing. There are a lot of fake ones among them. So if you have issues and even want to visit a traditional person, please consult those who are probably in between the stage. They will know those who are credible and those who are not. So those who practice acts that are very, very illegal, we support that. But, imagine we went to Bebiani and the river, which is the spirit the priest has been working with. The Bebiani mines has covered the river with slabs in such a way that if the priest wants to fetch some of the river, he has to write a letter to the mines. You get it, this. So if the person revolts, then you say he's a criminal. You understand? These are some of the things we want to deal with. So repair laws that marginalize indigenous economic and spiritual systems. And then implement legal pluralism that affirms local wisdom and jurisdiction. What would the outcome be? Legal framework that supports rather than oppresses regenerative economies. Again, we want to talk about this. I wrote a paper at the the Journal for Indigenous and Shamanic Studies, proposing that we have a day to honor our ancestors. Look, many countries are doing it. China makes sure that a day in a year, they send all the children to the cemetery to go and stay with their ancestors. Vietnam, the same. Look, those who are even fighting, who are brainwashing us not to do this, are actually doing it in secret. So our proposal to the government, to the institutions, even if the government will not start, let us push from our institutions a day to honor our ancestors. If you don't even want to honor them, a day to remember your lineage. What is it? What you couldn't write. You understand? Just take a pen and a paper and write the names of all your ancestors. Maybe two or three generations. Just do that in a day. So this should be institutionalized. Now, the outcome will be that we'll have or we'll appreciate and have a holistic understanding of who we are and the opportunities around us. That's not all. This can also bring a whole lot of benefits from tourism. I think this is the last one, the first course. This is what we have missed. The first course in terms of we as people, the first course in terms of we as Africans, the first course in terms of we as human beings. Development planning is ontologically rudderless. I think Professor Jasper said that. we don't even know what we're doing. All we know is we need to get the degree, get this, implement this policy, write a report about it. Whether it works or it doesn't work, we have done our part. We have retired and we are gone. For me, when you go and sit home as a retired lecturer, just ask yourself, what did I do for Africa? What did I do for the world? And what did I do for myself? Because if you only came to write for the West to support their ideology and you left your own behind, then you have, in a very great way, disappointed your continent and your lineage. Of course, we need to survive, and that is the road to survive. You have to publish for them. And that is why I love the idea of the RF ingenuity. You write a paper, it gets busted. Why? Probably because there is a recent paper I wrote with one of my professors about migration of Africans. We use these two churches, Mopa and then Flaga Kwanchire, I don't know, I've forgotten, Mama something. And then the review. When we inputted an idea which was very, very clear to state what the West has done to generate this, one of the reviewers said, should we put this as your own idea? Don't you think it will harm the paper? Can you remove it? But I don't think the RF, what do you call it? What do you call it? The RF, of course, I don't think they would do that. Even if they have to refine it, it won't be like a kind of a detrimental to your own race and detrimental to your country and detrimental to your personality. So that is the first cause. Formal recognition of the first cause, our roots, our source, our ancestors, as the moral foundation for the policy. What will be the impact? Provides an ethical and spiritual coherence which is missing now from the modern governance. Now with this, I feel that we should all walk backwards into the future with our eyes fixed on the past. That begins with the act of remembering. Who are you? These are what we call existential questions that individuals should ask themselves. If you really don't know who you are, then you are like the leaf that is falling from the top of an iroko tree. The wind decides where it falls. You are just pushed, brought forward, sent forth and back by the policies, the analysis that goes on every day. Then who are you? It doesn't mean that metanomics is asking you to go and live in the past. But no, metanomics is not a return to the past, but an evolution forward that remembers. Once you remember who you are, it is possible to move. So what would the paradigm be? Progress become the act of remembering. In a scripture, I've preached a lot, so I know how to quote the scripture. In a scripture, you hear David when he was picked from the wilderness and was asked to become the king of Israel. The shirt he was wearing, he put it in a room. And anytime he realizes that he was becoming unbecoming, he would go to that room and look at that dress and say, this is where I was. Let me humble myself. At least we can take that and put it in our pocket as Africans. We are not Europeans, we are Africans. Data serves destiny, and then algorithms will learn reverence. So the ultimate innovation will be restoring our sacred relationship with the cosmos. The gods and machines partner in a great work of stewardship. The future is metanomics. The picture there says everything. We are the center, using our indigenous system from, I don't know, from your right, and then artificial intelligence. With this together, we are not afraid of our ancestors. So we go back to ask our ancestors what we can do to build the future that we want. Thank you.
indeed the gods and machines partner in the great work of stewardship. At this point, we will take a comfort break and also take that opportunity to network among ourselves. I know people have got burning questions. The first two speakers are around. Please interact with them during this break. Now, looking at the time that we've got before the parallel sessions, may I suggest that we keep the break to just 15 minutes so that we'll have enough time to listen to So after our 15 minutes break, we'll have a presentation by Professor Obadele. Is Senor Peli here? Okay. So we will take the 15 minutes break, and afterwards, Professor Obadele will deliver his speech before we go into the parallel sessions. Thank you.
Okay, yes, 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 yes.
You know him?
Yes, yes. I met him in Kenya at ASAA conference some years back.
Wow. He doesn't know about this country, you would have to know.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure this is right up his alley.
He didn't know that.
Yeah.
Should have called him.
Hmm. Uh,
Your name, please.
Professor Kambo, Abadile Kambo,
From where?
University of Ghana.
Ghana.
Yeah, right here.
Crazy with that. You would have to know that.
How do you know him?
Yeah. My university, University of Ghana, he used to lecture.
Okay.
Now he left that place. I don't know where he is now.
Hmm.
He left the place.
Where is he now? I think he's at AUCC, if I'm not mistaken. Or AUCB, I think it is now.
There was an African conference in Indonesia. He was one of the speakers.
Hmm. Okay.
He likes such subject matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. And you're here?
I'm here to do a presentation.
Okay, but are you at UG?
I'm here.
Okay.
No, University of Ghana.
Okay, okay, okay. Oh, you said you're a university. Okay. Okay, nice, nice, nice. Nice to meet you. Jones, is there a tech person who can come and check? I have the presentation here. Okay, okay.
It's usually connected one, but she has to do it.
Oh, okay, 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 okay. For sure. Did I give you a phone? I think I did. Yeah.
I'm going to check it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Like to zoom in? Oh, she stepped out, okay.
laptop doesn't have an actual HDMI port.
It does, but it's faulty. The signal's not coming.
Let me check out. I'll come here.
Mimi? Yo, and yet. Boko, I'm a cause out now. Hey, intimate Johnny Baha. My shumuye. Kaka. Diego.
Professor, actually, Obadele Bakari Kambong, who is a master linguist and architect of Ebibitumi, the oldest and largest black social education network. He completed a PhD in linguistics at the University of Ghana, and actually he won the Best PhD Thesis Award in Humanities, and served as editor-in-chief of the Ghana Journal of Linguists from 2016 to 2023. His honors include the Marcus Garvey Foundation Award, which he won in 2019, the Provost Publications Award, which he won twice in 2016 and 2024. In terms of research, it spans, well, he can pronounce this word. How do you pronounce this? Sabait Net Kemetil, Studies of Black People, Serial Verb Construction Normalization, and Ebibi Fahudie Black Liberation. That's what it means. He has helped hundreds repatriate to Ghana and continues to build independent Black institutions in language, media, and education. In the next 30 minutes, he's going to tell us an interesting story. With a round of applause, let's welcome him.
All right. When I say Abibi Tumi, I want you to say Abibi Fahundi. Let's try that. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi. So my colleague here, he says, oh, is it the Abibi Tumi at Ekwepe Mampong? I said, yes. He says he has some land right over near Abibi Tumi headquarters, so that's very interesting. So today I'm going to speak on political economy of African spirituality's material culture, tools of liberation or traps of enslavement. Abibi Tumi! Black power is what Abibi Tumi is. Abibi Fahundie, black liberation, as mentioned. For the sake of time, I won't go over the entire abstract, but we'll go into what we're talking about. So the main question that I'm looking at for this presentation is how indigenous is the material culture of the spiritual systems of Abibi4? And we're dealing with the question of political economy. As mentioned, I'm Obimfo Obadele Kamban, also known as Nana Kwame Pebi Dati Aldikaing Bamuchida Mhene Iwa Akwiapem Mampong. Say that 3 times fast. Abibi Tumi! So we have Nana Amilcar Cabral, and I'll give you a quick quote from him. But particularly in the so-called diaspora, liberation is often the goal of reconnection with our spiritual systems. And before I go further, my mother is in the audience. She's in Okomfo and also a PhD holding psychologist, both at the same time. And what I know about our spiritual systems is due to her. So let's give her a round of applause. Wearing the red, black, and green in the front row. So I'll quote Nana Amilcar Cabral. He says, the exercise of imperialist domination, like all other foreign domination for its own security, requires cultural oppression and the attempt at direct or indirect destruction of the essential elements of the culture of the dominated people. If imperialist domination has a vital need to practice cultural oppression, national liberation is necessarily an act of culture. And again, that's Nana Amilcar Cabral. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi. For those in the back, there was a woman named Rosa Parks who fought not to have to sit in the back, so I'd ask for you to come down because we're a small group. I'm talking about you in the green, you also in the green. Please come down small, those wearing suits and ties. Please come down small so we can have more of an intimate crowd. Please, if you can also come down small. I want us to be interactive. Those here wearing hijab, if you can also come join us, I'd appreciate that. We want to have a more intimate gathering, right? For those who don't know Rosa Parks, they tried to force her to sit at the back of the bus, and she fought not to have to go all the way to the back, but to stay seated in the front. So you had those who fought for your rights, and we don't want those rights to be given away. Let's continue. Abibi Tumi. So when many of us think about the spiritual, let me say the religions of the enemies of black people, those include Christianity and Islam. So, you know, they'll say, Jesus loves you, now say it, and they're beating you into submission. But 300 years later, now, oh yeah, I love it, right? If you look at, you know, the religions, you know, there were forced conversions, imperialism, enslavement, and so forth and so on at the point of a gun, at the point of a sword. You know, you had those who are fighting not to have to pray to the imaginary, white man on a stick, but now many of us spend all of our time every Sunday going to pray to that same imaginary white man. So many of us, especially in the 1960s in, the so-called diaspora, they were like, if we are not white people, why are we praying to imaginary white people? And many started to leave those religions in order to look for liberation. Abibi Tumi. And here's a quote. It says, how can a slave and master both worship the same God, then both of them expect their prayers to be answered by the very same God? Baba Omoale and Malcolm X would talk about, the slave master or, lyncher has the noose around the neck and he's praying to the white man. And then the one who's being lynched is also praying to the same white man. Who's going to be listening to you? Abibi Tumi. Also, black people drop the religion of Christianity because of slavery, but then go convert to Islam, which enslaved them as well. These are some of the head scratchers that we have to deal with here. So again, the background I'm giving you is that a lot of people are leaving these religions and they're looking for liberation. They're looking for something other than praying to a white man on a stick. They're looking for something other than praying to a rock in a desert. They're looking for liberation, and they're trying to do it through interacting with our ancestors, the Abosom, and so forth. But I'm going to go into to what degree are we actually able to get the liberation that we're looking for in the first place. Abibi Tumi. That is the weakest Abibi Fahodi I've ever heard. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi. All right, we're getting there. So we're going to look at the political economy of what is supposed to be the spiritual systems of Abibi4, that's to say black people. Right, so you see, when you're going to interact with your own ancestors, what do you have to bring? You have to bring something from the Dutch, from Holland somewhere, just to interact with your own ancestors. That doesn't sound very much like Abibi Tumi. Anytime you want to interact with a traditional ruler, what do you have to do? You have to bring bottles of a liquor that is used to kill you. When you see the Abosom, sometimes someone is possessed and the Abosom are smoking cigarettes. And there's a question, are we actually going towards the liberation that we were looking for in the first place? Or have we gone into other traps of enslavement? These are photographs that I took at my own place, Ekrepim Mampong, at the occasion of Ohum and Ojura festivals a couple of years back. And again, you see the Abosom are addicted to nicotine, apparently. And if they're not addicted to nicotine, they're addicted to liquor. This is another one, a carcinogen, Johnson's baby powder, right? And again, you see the Abosom are addicted to the baby powder that causes cancer. Johnson & Johnson was just sued for somewhere around the area of $1 billion that they had to pay because it was found that they knew that the baby powder that they were selling to black people specifically was causing cancer. But they didn't shut down the factory. They said, let's just send it to Ghana because we know that those fools, those idiots, they don't know any better and they are not interested in Abibi Tumi. We continue. So we're going to look briefly at created tastes and desires. So here is Nana Amos Wilson. He says, why does the black man say freedom is doing what I want to do? And why is it that everything he wants to do enriches the European? Even when it comes to what's supposed to be our spiritual, you'll go into a shrine and the only thing made by black people in that shrine is you. Because if it's not white calico cloth, it's the cigarettes. If it's not that, it's the liquor, it's candy. There's nothing in the entire shrine made by black people except for you who knows that you are made by a black man and a black woman to produce you. Are we going towards Abibi Tumi? Abibi Tumi! Abibi Tumi! We're getting there. So when we observe who benefits from our interests, tastes, and desires, we will see who implanted those interests, tastes, and desires for their own ultimate benefit. So basically, you can follow the money trail. if I see that you originated this thing, then I can start thinking forward to how do you benefit from the thing that you originated. Or if I happen to see that you got $1 billion from black people, then I may come to, oh, you may have originated this thing that you used to get our money. So you can take it from either side in order to find out what's going on here. We continue. Again, quoting Nana Amos Wilson, he says, the essence of controlling people is to provoke a desire in them, and then, of course, have the control of the satisfaction of that desire. That's the foundation of the capitalist system and economic system. And he also says oppression rests on people going places and enjoying pleasures that destroy them and who are excited by nonsense and bored by stuff that they should be learning. In this world where things are backwards, those who are oppressed must made to feel freest when they are most enslaved. There's a lot of brofokasa right there. I don't know if we picked it up. Abibi to me! But when we look over to the right, this is what we're talking about, the Schnapps, the White Horse, the Rothmans. Aren't these supposed to be the accoutrements of the Abosom? Isn't that what they're asking us for, supposedly? Let's ask the question. Again, created tastes and desires, Eurasians and their progeny, and because Europe isn't a continent, I never say European because there's no such thing. That's just a peninsula of one landmass which is called Eurasia, but that's a sidebar. So I say Eurasians and their progeny implanted something inside of us that has interests, tastes, and desires that ultimately benefit them in terms of language, in terms of food, the religion, the values, the social relations, the names. So when you're going to these churches and mosques and so forth and so on, what's happening is that a little white person, so-called, is being planted inside of you. A little Arab is being planted inside of you and is saying, I want what I want. Even if it destroys the host body, it's like a parasite that's inside of you that wants what it wants. It doesn't care if what it wants is causing lung cancer. It doesn't care if what it wants is causing liver cancer. It wants what it wants, and that's the reason why it was brought to you in the first place, is to implant this little Arab inside of you, or this little so-called white person inside of you, to desire the things that it desires. And of course, that enriches them. We continue. So we're going to look at the political economy related to created tastes and desires in Ghana. So we'll look briefly at liquor, baby powder, cigarettes, and perfume. Of course, this isn't exhaustive. I could go into cars, I can go into clothes, I can go into 100 different areas, but we'll focus on these 4 that are related to the spiritual system, supposedly. So again, this is the political economy of systematically replacing life with death, or putting Isfet in place of Ma'at. Abibi to me! Abibi to me! Abibi to me! I think too many of us forgot that we're supposed to be looking for black power and looking for black liberation. We went to the spiritual systems looking for that. We came there and we just memorized rituals. We continue. Palm wine, Nsefu. The health benefits of this drink will amaze you. So palm wine contains the antioxidant vitamin C, and vitamin C, on the other hand, helps in maintaining good eye health. Also, some people are trying to drink kombucha and all these other fermented drinks because they are known as probiotics that have a good effect on the microbiome, the gut, all of these types of things that we're talking about now. But this is what our ancestors were dealing with before, right? The good bacteria inside of the gut. But what have we done? We've replaced that with imported alcohol, right? Something that does not enrich us. Looking at 2021, you have almost $500 million, right? That's in red, 425,395,727 USD according to UN Comtrade. And you can see the trajectory over the years, right? It's looked like, generally trending up in terms of what we import in order to satisfy a taste and a desire, right? That's the hinkies, right? Because if you go to the IMFA and you're not bringing JH hinkies that comes from Holland, they may send you back and say, go to Holland before you come to interact with your traditional rulers. Go back to Holland before you can speak to your own ancestors, What are we really doing here? Abibi to me. And again, we can look at something that was promoting eye health, right? Something that was promoting gut health, something that was introducing good bacteria and so forth and so on. Vitamin C is now replaced by something that is causing cardiac issues, oral cavity issues, liver issues, gastrointestinal issues, neurologic issues, lung issues, muscle issues. Where are we? All of these different things that we're talking about, that the liquor that we're using is actually destroying us. So we've taken away something that was promoting life and replaced it with something that is promoting what? Death. So as my father Nana Kamal Kamban would say, they're making money off of our demising process. This is subtle suicide. It's not like we're putting a gun to our head and killing ourselves immediately. We're killing ourselves little by little by little, and they're making money off of our demising process. Abibi to me. But we're taught that this is supposed to be our spiritual system. But we never ask the question, this is our spiritual system since when? Because the Abosom couldn't have asked for schnapps before schnapps was even brought here. So what were we doing before the Dutch were here? We continue. Also, you can look into frankincense, right? So burning incense is psychoactive. A new class of antidepressants might be right under our noses from burning frankincense. The resin from Boswellia plant activates poorly understood ion channels in the brain to alleviate anxiety or depression. This suggests that an entirely new class of depression and anxiety drugs might be right under our noses. You can look at this as well under Science Daily, National Institutes of Health. You can find more articles on this. But this is something that causes smoke, but this is smoke that is actually having a good impact, neurologically. This is something that was promoting life, right? Abibi to me. However, that has been replaced by smoke that promotes what? Death in the form of tobacco. And you can see 72 million, over 72 million USD as of 2021. In terms of annual international trade statistics by country, we're looking at Ghana here. And you can see all of the money that we've given just because we're told that the Abosom want cigarettes. They're addicted to nicotine. When did they get addicted to nicotine? Because I know 1,000 years ago they weren't addicted to nicotine. I know 2,000 years ago they weren't addicted to nicotine. The things that we're calling traditional cannot be traditional by definition. It means that they had to throw away what the tradition was in order to do this newfangled thing that our enemies brought to us, our colonial enemies, I mean. Abibi to me. And again, there's too many things to even list here. That the tobacco has an impact on the immune system, cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, complications, blood clotting, so forth and so on. You can go down the entire list, right? So again, we've gone from something that promotes psychoactive health to something that promotes death, right? But we're taught that this is what the Abosom is needing. This is what the Mwetia need or want, created tastes and desires. We can also look at kaolin powder. In my household, this is what we do anytime we have stomach issues. Someone has a runny stomach, we'll take some of their chire, ailo, I think it's called, and this is something that's actually helpful. Why? Because it has adsorbent properties. Some years back, I was looking at a documentary on macaws, a type of bird in the Congo, and it was going into how they're able to eat berries that are poisonous, but after they eat those poisonous berries, they go to the riverside, they ingest some of this white clay, and they're able to go scot-free. Why? Because of the adsorbent properties that the chemicals bind to the kaolin powder when it's in the system and it's excreted out with no problems, right? So again, kaolin is a type of clay. And when I was growing up, there was a pharmaceutical, they called it kaopectate, and it's coming from kaolin and pectin. And this is something that our ancestors were using, but now you can find it, on drugstores in the US, but we have no idea that this is the science that's coming from our ancestors. You can look that up, kaopectate, I don't know if that's still in production. But kaolin is used for mild to moderate diarrhea, severe diarrhea, cholera, so forth and so on, relieves soreness and swelling inside the mouth, and so forth. So this is something that was bringing about life. Abibi to me. Abibi to me. Abibi to me. Abibi to me! Now we're into it. But that has been replaced by the cosmetics such as the baby powder. The baby powder that we know is a carcinogen to the point that Johnson & Johnson had to pay over $1 billion in a lawsuit. We'll come back to that. So this is what we're seeing, right? Isn't this the baby powder that you see all over? The women, they want to put the baby powder here, put it here, put it there, put it everywhere, without knowing that this is known to cause cancer, deathly cancer. But then something happens to them, and then they'll say, if you're by for. No, Johnson & Johnson by for, not if you're by for. So women with cancer awarded billions in baby powder suit. So an appellate court in Missouri upheld more than $2 billion in damages against Johnson & Johnson, saying the company knew there was asbestos in its baby powder. But they didn't stop selling it. They didn't shut down the factory. Who did they bring it to? Look in the mirror. Because they said, we know you're not going to do research. And who do you trust but the one whose image you've been praying to every Sunday? Who do you trust with your life and the life of your baby but the one who you've been praying to, who's been raping, killing, murdering, lobotomizing, and sodomizing ever since the day they first saw you? That's the one who you trust is oh so sacred and holy, right? So I gave this concept in an article that I did on names, actually, this idea of cultural linguistic aids and the breakdown of black culture as immune system. So basically, our culture is our immune system. When you have a strong immune system, it says this has to stay out, this cannot come in, right? But what happens when your immune system is broken down? Then anything can come in. Isn't that what we see? Anything can come in. We'll look at it. So infiltration of what's referred to as the Urugu virus allows anything so-called white or Eurasian in, any infections, germs, flu, virus, right? So this is when your autoimmune system has a deficiency now. However, we're impervious to products from other cultural linguistic groups of Abibi4 black people. So if, matter of fact, I'm here in Ghana, someone saw me wearing an agbada, and they said, oh, you need to wear Ghana clothes. Why are you wearing this agbada? And the person is wearing suit and tie. That means anything from outside can come in, but something from the neighbor right here, you're questioning me. Why would you do that? My name, Obadele, people say, oh, you must be Yoruba. I say, no, I'm not Yoruba. Oh, you just don't want to mention your Yoruba. But there's some problem with this Obadele, but then someone is called John. No problem. They'll ask me, when I go someplace, they'll say, oh, are you a Nigerian? I say, no, I'm a Ghanaian. I'll show my Ghanaian passport. Then where from this? And the one who's asking me, her name is Prisla. Perfectly Ghanaian. I'm wearing clothes made by black people, and they're looking at me like I have an eye in my forehead. But the person there is wearing tuxedo with top hat, right? And monocle, and cane, and white gloves. And that's perfectly Ghanaian. When did the abnormal become normal, and when did the normal become abnormal? I'm wearing clothes made by black people, and that's abnormal. I have a name of black people, and that's abnormal. But as soon as I come in with my suit and tie and I say, hi, my name is Joseph. My name is Bob. Oh, welcome to the Ghanaian side of things. Wonderful, right? I don't even have to show my passport at that point. Now you must be a Ghanaian. But this is what it is. So we have these black cups of coffee, and the white cream can go into that coffee, right? But if we start talking about, no, let's leave out the cream and let's just blend the coffee. No, you can't do that. Have you met, how many Ghanaians have you met with a name like, let's say, Mugabe? How many Ghanaians have you met with a name like Imhotep? How many Ghanaians have you met with a name like Traoré? Right? We can have Asante as a name. That's fine. That's perfectly Ghanaian. That's fine. You can have a name like, I don't even know, Ajele. We can have any of those names that are inside of the Berlin Conference borders. But if you do anything from outside of those Berlin Conference borders, there's a question. But there's no question when this white cream is coming in. This coffee that used to wake you up Now it puts you to sleep. Abibi to me. So of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And when you see that you've got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who have problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you'll know how you can get yours straight. So this is my segue into protectionism, right? Imagine if we wine industry from all of this liquor that's being imported. Imagine if we protected the cowlin baby. Imagine if we protected, just talked about, from these imports that are over $500 million. Don't you think we could retain that $1 billion, $2 billion that we're sending outside to pave a road or two in Ghana? We're supposed to be spiritual, right? But we are relinquishing all of our time, energy, resources, money, and spirit to our enemies when that same money could be used right here in order to repair the shrine where the wall is being broken down. All right? So by 1816, the U.S. had imposed a 35% tax on most imported manufacturers, which rose to 50% in 1832. Between 1864 and 1913, it was the most heavily protected nation on earth, right? And the fastest growing. It wasn't until after the Second World War, when it had already become top dog, that it dropped most of its tariffs. The same strategy was followed by Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and almost every other country that is rich today. Protectionism is not, let me go import hinky schnapps. That schnapps should never be allowed to come in. Abibi to me. But black people, on the other hand, suffer from cultural AIDS. Anything that enriches others while destroying black people can get in without evaluation. Right? According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, EU protectionism deprives developing countries, that's supposed to be us, right, of nearly $700 billion in export income a year. That's almost 14 times more than poor countries receive in foreign aid. So are they interested in what's best or interested in what ensures the continued existence and survival of themselves and their descendants? So they say free trade sometimes, but not when it comes to protectionism for their own markets. You understand? And that is depriving us. Abibi to me. So again, according to Nana Maremba Anish, she says culture is a means by which a people protects themselves. We can understand culture as the immune system of a people. Culture is that immune system, right? The virus is the Urugu virus that results in a condition of cultural AIDS, and that's what we're suffering from. So as I come to wrap this up, the best way to fight an alien culture is to live your own. In doing so, you're strengthening your own spiritual, psychological, cultural, and economic immune system. Serving yourself is not enslavement. And what you can do is chart every thought, word, and action in every area of activity with regard to who originates it and who benefits from it and to what end and with what consequences. So in other words, we can stop financing our own oppression under the guise of what's supposed to be our spiritual systems. Abibi to me. So, but how can you do that? How can you determine what is truly beneficial? My father and I came up with what we call the Kanban dime, so you can see how it originates, whether it's a thought, word, behavior, or social interaction, how it originates in the area of psychology, culture, economics, education, social, religion, politics, health, confusion, or is it just a diversion, a version of death? Who benefits from the thought, word, behavior, or social interaction? What is the ultimate objective? What are the consequences? Is it working towards Abibi Fahodie? You're supposed to say Abibi to me. Or Abrafon Sheswa, Eurasian oppression. And again, this is a deeper analysis than the tradition versus modernity conundrum that we talk about. Again, you can chart the activities in every area of life with regard to yourself as a system of self-accountability. And essentially, we're lost at the crossroads. You find Nana Kwame Nkrumah says, the essence of neocolonialism is that the state which is subject to it is, in theory, independent and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty. In reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. And don't you see us being directed from outside, not just in terms of Christian sanity, not just in terms of Islam, but even when it comes to what's supposed to be our own spiritual systems, we're directed from the outside. because the economics of it are directed from outside. So consuming what you don't produce and producing what you don't consume is neo-enslavement, neo-colonialism. That if you eat in 30 houses, your mouth isn't hard. But then also, how did the spiritual realm get colonized? There's a proverb that says, "Okonfo jimian and the bosom jimi." I should tell Sebi answer. Sebi. That if the Okonfo is foolish, then his or her bosom has also become foolish. So if the person has created tastes and desires where that person wants tobacco, that person wants alcohol, that person wants baby powder, well, that's going to be reflected in what the abosom is now magically, supposedly asking for. And as Nana Thomas Sankara said, he who feeds you controls you. So they made sure that you would have a taste and a desire for the tobacco. They made sure you would have a taste and desire for the alcohol, and then they've colonized your own spiritual realm thereby. Now, also in the oldest book in the history of the world, over 4,350 years ago, this is Imahu Ptahhotep. You see a picture of him. I don't know if you recognize any resemblance. You see a resemblance? You do. Our education minister said that those with long hair should not be able to do their studies. If only he knew that the author of the oldest book in the world had locks just like me, maybe he would be a better education minister, but I'll leave that to the side. So it says, he who listens to his belly, he belongs to the enemy. We continue. So even in the spirituality of Abibi4, we must produce what we consume, and we must consume what we produce. Anything else is neo-enslavement dressed up as Abibi Fahondie. Abibi to me, Or not everything we happen to find Abibi4 on the continent doing right now or in the past is indigenous and or a tool for Abibi Fahondie and the restoration of Ma'at. So if you are manipulated into a culture of desiring that which enriches your enemy and destroys you and your children, you must resist and reverse that culture. So in conclusion, dua medamwase nyeyi waladon akpenami jeregen Jeff eshe asante nisana matondo mamingi. Appreciate y'all. Oh, that's it. And last thing we have the Abibi Tumi Abibi Fahondie Film Festival coming up November 28th through 30th. The Abibi Tumi Virtual Conference from the 5th through 7th. And then December 12th through 14th, the Abibi Tumi Conference and Abibi Fahondie Festival. You're all invited. So I'll be passing these around. This is for all black people who are interested in Abibi Tumi. Abibi Tumi! Abibi Tumi! Medase.
Round of applause. Okay, we will now go into parallel sessions. There are 6 parallel sessions in total, and the parallel sessions follow the numbers of the seminar rooms. There are 7 seminar rooms, but we will not use the 7th seminar room. So for session 1, you go to seminar room 1 in that order, up to parallel session 6. The chairs of the various sessions are there. We will spend the next, I think roughly we've got about 4 people presenting in each session, 25 total. So let's say in the next hour, we should be able to now do an engagement amongst ourselves. This is where you get to present the paper that you submitted. The audience will be there to look at the paper, what you present, and offer insightful comments. Let's make it as engaging as possible, and I will encourage all of us to find ourselves in one of the rooms. Don't be outside. Participate in the intellectual discussion, and let's make it lively. Afterwards, so after 1 hour, we will all go back to where we usually have our lunch. We'll have a quick lunch break, and then go on to do the second parallel set of presentations. After which we'll come back here to conclude part A of the conference, which is the academic conference. The next one, we'll talk about it later. So there is an easier route here. You either go up there and descend into the rooms, or you simply exit here, go to the left, and you have access to all the seminar rooms from 1 to 6. Thank you very much. Apologies, I think I mixed up the hours. It's not 1 hour. We've got 25 minutes per person, so both your presentation and answers. In my mind, I was calculating 1 hour to be 100 hours for some reason. Apologies for that. Yeah. So please go into your sessions, engage, I'll come around. I'm also chairing. If the following people are here, just make yourself known. Eric Nombari. Is Eric here? He didn't come. Okay. Just take over.